Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. My special guest today is Professor Richard Wolff. You've seen him before. He's an economist. He's also the host of Democracy at Work. Welcome back, Professor Wolff.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. I'm glad to be here.
So the last time we talked, it was before Donald Trump's presidential inauguration. And I think some of the predictions that you made, we are seeing come to light, in particular with DOGE. I want to show you a recent interview that was on Fox News with Elon Musk and the DOGE team. And I want to get your take about this, about these findings that they said they have found with government waste.
The ways that the government is defrauded is that the computer systems don't talk to each other. So if the computer systems don't talk to each other, then you can exploit that gap. And fraudsters exploit that gap to take advantage. For example, there were over $300 million of Small Business Administration loans that has been given out to people under the age of 11.
Well, actually, to add to it, it's $300 million under the age of 11 and over $300 million to over the age of 120.
Definitely.
Small business loans.
Correct.
Yes. The oldest American is 114. So it's safe to say if their age is 115 or above, they're fake. Or they should be in the Guinness Book of World Records. And we should not be giving out loans to babies. So the youngest recipient of a Small Business Administration loan is a 9-month-old, which is a very, very precocious baby we're talking about here. So obviously it was just fraudulent. And they do terrible things. They actually will see that a kid's been born. They will steal that kid's social security number and then take out a loan and leave that kid with a bad credit rating. There was literally a baby. The terrible things are being done, is what we're saying. And we're stopping these terrible things.
And you can stop it? I mean,
we are stopping it.
The reason this is happening is because the two systems are not talking to each other.
Yes.
Right. And so you don't know at the Small Business Administration that you're giving a loan to a 9-month-old, which happened in one case, because you're not cross-referencing that with the Social Security Administration data that has birth dates. So that.
Okay, I think you get the gist there. So, Professor Wolff, number one, do you agree with these findings that they found? I think a lot of people feel that some of these numbers are exaggerated. And if you do not agree, can you explain why?
Yes, I do not agree. I think this is phony as a $4 bill. This is a political theater. That's all it is. These are actors. You don't have to pay them because, like Musk, they're already rich. And they are larding it on with the bubbling noise about babies and old people. Let me begin by saying all economic systems that are large and complicated are full of errors and mistakes. It's part of the territory. I can assure you, if Mr. Musk gave me the opportunity to go fishing in the records of Tesla, I would find that he overpaid for this screwdriver and he underreported that gas leak and all the rest. And I could make a little scene with people sitting behind me in front of the cameras, shaking my head and saying, "It's terrible, it's terrible. If only you didn't have this, then the Tesla wouldn't cost so much." Because, this is BS. And you know what that stands for, but I'm polite and I won't mention it beyond. But let me show you the bigger picture of all of this. The number of civilian employees in the federal government is about 2.5 million right now. There's another 2.5 million in the military, but I'm not going to count that. Just civilian employees. So the group that he has chosen, he and Mr. Trump, to focus on to make it efficient is a group of 2.5 million civilian employees of the government. But wait a minute, that's the federal government in Washington. We have two other levels of government in the United States, which Mr. Musk either doesn't know or has chosen not to talk to us about. One of them is the 50 states, each of whom has government employees, civilian government employees. How many of them are there? Answer, 5 million. twice as many as in the federal government. Then there's the third level of government in the United States that Elon Musk either doesn't know about or forgot to tell us. It's the people who run the cities and towns and villages of our country. They have their own government, you know, the mayor, the city council, all of that. When you look at who they employ, civilian employees, it's 15 million. So if you put the local and the state together, 15 plus 5 works out, and even Elon can get this, 20 million public employees. If you were really concerned about efficiency, why wouldn't you be looking at the 20 million? Why are you concentrating on the 2.5 million? Answer, because we can organize the theater, because we are the government at the top. We can't do anything about the state and local. So, I mean, this has nothing to do with efficiency. Now, let me do it yet another way. I went back and I looked and I asked the question, how many federal civilian employees were there back in the 1960s and 70s? You may be surprised to learn 2.5 million, just like now. Only our population is 100 million more American citizens than there were back 50 years ago. And yet we haven't increased the federal employees. If you're servicing 100 million more people with the same number of federal employees, you know what that means? They're more efficient. That's what efficient means. They shouldn't be hunting them down. They're the least ones. That's why it's all fake. That's why it's all theater. Look, this last thing, this is really important. When employers fire workers, they don't want to tell them the truth, which is, we are in the business of making money. And you're not helping us make money for whatever reason. People don't like our product. People don't like the way we designed it. People have gone on to other things. But we're not going to tell you that, because that could get us into trouble saying to you, you're fired because we're not making profit. So we come up with other BS reasons. One of them is efficiency. If I had a nickel every time an employer told a lie about efficiency to a worker, I'd be a much richer person than I have become. This is fakery from top to bottom, beginning to end. If you really cared about efficiency, you would never fire tens of thousands of people at once. You'd have to go in and actually look at the work being done. Try to figure out, is it being done reasonably well? Could we do it with fewer people? How many? You don't just go in. Let's remember Elon Musk, that wonderful picture that I believe will haunt him for the rest of his life. He's standing on a podium somewhere holding a chainsaw. I'm taking a chainsaw. You know what he was doing? He was throwing tens of thousands of people out of a job, out of their income, plunging their families into distress, plunging their communities. And for what? To look tough and manly in the worst possible way. This is a fake show, and we all ought to be angry that they're presuming we are so stupid as to fall for it.
I totally agree with you there. And I think the other problem that's happening is that they are trying to convince the working class that they're doing something for them, but they're actually not doing anything for them. We essentially have a billionaire, well, now 2 billionaires, firing workers. And some people that I've noticed on social media that did vote for Trump are not falling for it. Some of them are like, how is this putting Americans first if you're firing people, if you're laying people off? Some of them are starting to see that. But I would say the other half is still saying, oh, no, they're trying to help us. They're doing something for us. But I think it's a trick. If you want to have efficiency, if you really want to like cut bloated spending, then essentially I think you would start with the defense budget. which is over $800 billion. I think $850 billion at this point. So that's where they would have started. I would think, in my mind, if you're really trying to do that. Donald Trump said that he wanted to cut the Pentagon budget in half. And I told people, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it, if that's actually going to happen. But what I've been trying to get people to understand is look at where they're choosing to focus. They're choosing to make those cuts with the workers instead of making those cuts in the defense part.
Yeah, I would go even further and say to you that there are serious consequences. When you fire tens, maybe now hundreds of thousands of workers, because if Elon Musk and Trump are going to reach the targets they said they had in mind with firing public workers, they're going to have to fire hundreds of thousands. Otherwise, the amount of money here is too small to make a big difference. That's why the 300 million, that may sound like a lot to you, but in a multi-trillion-dollar budget, that's like losing a couple of quarters out of your pocket when you went in after your keys too quickly. Again, more theater, more make-believe. But I want to go after another dimension of all of this. If you lay off hundreds of thousands of public employees, these are not rich people. They have to go find another job. Well, where do you think they're going to go? They can't go to another government office because they're all being fired and laid off. Where these public employees go when they are ex-public employees is into the private sector, where the rest of us work. And you know what they're going to do to get a job? Offer to do it for less money, offer to do it for poorer working conditions. They're going to be a downward pressure on the wages of the rest of us in the private sector. That's a real reason they're doing it, because that's what employers like to see. If you fire the public, then I don't have to pay the taxes. And then those people will come looking for work, and I can replace the workers I got now with them. We made scapegoats out of the immigrants, saying they're taking our jobs. The same people don't seem to understand those laid off public workers, they're coming for our jobs. And they don't have the problem that they don't have the right document. They're American citizens, and they're going to worsen our conditions. This is not good for working people of any kind. This is an attack on us, and it would be the minimum understanding that would let you see it.
And then those people will also become the scapegoats. Then the workers will complain that all of these federal employees that lost their jobs, that you guys are the reason why we're getting lower wages now.
Yeah, but none of them wanted to lose their jobs. None of them, they were fired by Mr. Musk. If you're upset, then Mr. Musk is the problem you have. Mr. Trump choosing Mr. Musk is the problem you have.
100%. And then there's another thing here about these federal jobs that I think a lot of people did not realize that I talked about before. And this was the experience with my family as well. Much of the Black middle class was built by federal jobs. That may change. So a lot of people don't realize this. For the last several decades, federal jobs help Black workers find stable work with guardrails to prevent bias, but mass cuts are threatening decades of upward mobility. So now we go into another issue here, and that is building some type of generational wealth. There are a lot of us, particularly in the US, where a lot of us that are millennials, where our parents were able to do that because they had a federal job. A lot of us, particularly that come from the Maryland, Virginia, DC area, a lot of people that live there have federal jobs with good benefits. And that did help some families, in particular Black families, start to establish to build some type of generational wealth. And a lot of these people that are losing their jobs are also Black Americans. So that's something I've been trying to get people to understand, that that's not helping things. It's actually going to make the situation worse. And I wanted to get your take about that.
Yes, it's a very, very important thing to understand. The whole civil rights movement, back to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and all the others who fought for it. One of the ways American capitalism dealt with that struggle was to say, okay, we're the government. We can't force private employers to stop being racist, but we can at least make sure that the government does something to deal with the generations of maltreatment, of discrimination that Black and brown people have suffered. And so starting 40, 50 years ago, exactly as you said, Sabrina, Black people were given a kind of an edge, a little step up. We will make federal jobs and we will look to give them to you. It was a kind of affirmative action, maybe before it was called that, but that's what it was. And it was very much a government. It was agreed to by Republicans and Democrats. It happened over a long period of time. What you are doing now is exactly what you are saying. You are undoing 30 to 40 years of preference. It's a preference that was dealt to keep this country together, to avoid a civil war again. We had one before over slavery. We could have another one over the fruits of it. And it was understood by nearly everyone except die-hard white supremacists, of course. But for everyone else, it looked like, okay, good. Here is something that can be done. It's being undone, folks. And Black and brown people, you know, now that they've had a taste of a better life, they don't want to go back. No one would. They're exactly right. They're being singled out. This choice of going after federal employees has the effect of really discriminating against Black and brown because they are a bit more, the percentage, if you look at a little larger in federal employees than they are in other areas that have not been as open to them as they should have been. So this is an attempt to correct an historic injustice, and now we are going back on that. Mr. Trump is doing the work that white supremacists want him to do. No one else wants that. And that's going to come back and be a blot on him and his legacy that he will not outrun that. That will catch up with him as a very, very serious damage to the United States as a society that is being done here.
Do you think that the actions from Elon Musk and Donald Trump, do you think that would be enough to prevent the Republican Party from winning again in 2028? And I ask because news just broke earlier this morning that Donald Trump is seriously trying to run for president for a third term in 2028. And some people have alluded to that the reason why Donald Trump lost in 2020 wasn't because he looked out for his billionaire friends, but because of the effects of the pandemic at that point in time. Do you think that would be enough for him to lose in 2028, or do you think it may not be?
At this point, and you know, I'm not a predictor. I don't believe in it, but at this point, I must tell you, 2 months or whatever it is now, almost 3 months into his presidency, I see one blunder, one mistake, one chaos after another. You know, I'm an economist, so I specialize in financial news and financial developments. We are looking at a recession this year. Why? Why would we have a recession? Well, there's a simple answer. Businesses are holding back making investments. That's why they're not hiring workers like they had planned to. They're not buying machinery like they had planned to. That's why a recession is coming. And why are they hesitating? Because of Mr. Trump and Mr. Musk. They don't know from one day to the next whether there'll be a tariff or won't be a tariff, tax go up, tax go down, whether we will be trading with Mexico or not, with Canada or not, with Europe or not, with China or no businessman or woman can make a rational decision about where to locate a factory, where to buy your raw materials in a chaotic world like this. And the only people making the world look like this are Trump and Musk. All the rest of the world is reacting. They didn't start with the tariffs, none of them. China didn't, Europe didn't, Canada didn't, Mexico didn't. That was all started by Trump and Musk. Now, they may all retaliate. Many of them will, and that will hurt the United States economy. But they're retaliating to the initiative taken by Trump and Musk. And I believe the Democratic Party, weak and disorganized as it is, will make hay out of that. I think Mr. Trump is not doing himself any favor by saying that after the Congress of the United States, many, many years ago, in the late 1940s, passed a law that limited a president to 2 terms, that he wants to undo all of that, makes him look like the dictatorial, aspiring politician that his critics have suggested he is. And that's going to cost him still other people support, because who wants this? And I want to remind people, this is an old man. This is an overweight man. This is a man who gets less exercise than your stuffed teddy bear. This is really, he's already telling us what he's going to do into the 2030s in his, put aside whether that makes him crazy already, but I don't think this is going to help him. And I think if he doesn't radically alter, he is looking at a decline which will be the most remarkable decline of a president. He's already the most remarkable president to get in there. He may very well show us he's the most remarkable president who got kicked out of there.
Interesting points. I want to point to this as well. One of the things I've also noticed, it seems that this push to take Greenland, to make Greenland a part of the United States. I think J.D. Vance said the quiet part out loud during his press conference there the other day. He said that China is in the way. China is doing business in the Arctic, and we need to protect you from them. So this alludes to something that you mentioned a couple of years ago, which is how big China is growing economically and that they are going to be a force to be reckoned with. Now I see the U.S. government, at least under the Trump administration, although I think both parties have this kind of opinion of China becoming too big, but under the Trump administration, now they're trying to make other countries like Greenland a part of the United States, basically to push China out of that Arctic circle. What does that mean for the U.S. economically if we're looking towards the future? Because a big thing that I've noticed, there is this app called Red Note. A lot of people flocked over there when TikTok was banned for a short period, when it was shut down for a short period. And over on Red Note, you get the opportunity to ask people in China questions about just to see what they're aware of. And one of the questions that I asked was, in China, are people like struggling with healthcare, and how do you do? And some of the responses from people in China was, I can't believe your country won't give you healthcare, or I can't believe that you have so many poor people in your country. Like, they're literally shocked. And part of me wonders, is the US government just has this fear that the more and more the working class starts to complain, they may start to look at a country like China and say, how come they don't have the poverty conditions that we have? How come they're doing, pretty well economically? Why aren't there people struggling the way like ours are here in the United States? And they may start to make more demands. And I mean, outside of like the Bernie Sanders campaign demands, but I mean, more people who weren't even a part of that type of politics may start to say, that's it, something has to change. I'm curious your perspective about that, them wanting to acquire Greenland and this fear that they have over China's economy.
Yes, thank you for asking. I'm pleased about it. Let me pick up, though, before I do, with one thing you just said. China is an extremely successful story. This was one of the poorest countries on earth 50 years ago. I mean, mass starvation, no basic toilets in many parts of the country. And now they are a superpower. In 40 years, they developed a modern economy that took Europeans and Americans centuries to do. It is incredible. And everyone in the world, left winger, right winger, and right in the middle, if you stop and take a look, it will blow your mind what was achieved there. And I'm not saying everything about China is wonderful. It isn't. They have their problems. We have ours. But if you want to tell a story about going from a poor person's life to a middle income situation, then the number one story in modern history is the story of the People's Republic of China. No way around it. For each of the last 25 years, the average rate of growth of the economy of the United States, the GDP, we call it, gross domestic product, has grown here in the United States 2.5% on average. And over that time, the same 30 to 40 years, the growth of the GDP of China has been between 6 and 9%. No contest, they win. That's why China is the powerhouse that it is today, number one. Number two, the United States over the last 15 years has tried to slow down, to undermine, to challenge the Chinese. It has failed. Didn't succeed. China keeps growing. This last year, 2024, the United States economy grew 2.8%, the Chinese economy 5%, the Indian economy 7%. These are the numbers of the International Monetary Fund. They're not partisan one way or the other. Here is the reality. They can provide health care for their people, and they do. They can provide free or subsidized higher education for their people, and they do. I mean, let me remind folks, my family is French. A part of it still lives in France. In France, the law says when you enter the labor force, when you finished your high school or you finished college and you go into the labor force, your employer must, whoever it is, must give you 5 weeks of paid vacation every year. Most Americans never get 5 weeks of paid vacation after 10, 20, 30 years of working someplace. I mean, higher education in France is free. You have to pay for your room and board, but you don't pay tuition and fees. My relatives don't have college debt when they finish college because it wasn't necessary. They didn't need to do that. I mean, and they have a health insurance from the day you're born to the day you die. You get injured, you get sick, you go to the health clinics, you get taken care of. Healthcare is just as good as here. It costs you nothing. That's the way it works. So what the United States working class is going to be doing in the years to come is exactly what, Sabrina, what you said. They're going to figure out. This isn't publicized. Many people don't know what you have learned, what I just said. And that's a criticism of our media, who keep a lot from our people. But that's been the truth in France for decades. There's nothing new here. We didn't know about it. And by the way, it's true in Germany, it's true in Italy, it's true in Scandinavia, it's true everywhere in Europe. For example, Europe also doesn't have the death penalty. Nobody is electrocuted. Nobody has a firing squad, which we had a couple of weeks ago. They don't believe in killing people. They don't think it's right. Americans, we outdo each other. One state, well, Texas, California, Florida, they like killing people. It's extraordinary what the differences are. We ought to learn about it. The Chinese have the most modern radio and television in the world. The best electric car, just to give you a flavor, the best electric car in the world is not the Tesla. It's not Mr. Musk. It's a Chinese electric car company. It's called the BYD Corporation. And by the way, that stands for the three English words, build your dream. That's the name of the Chinese company, BYD. They make the best electric cars and trucks in the world at the cheapest price in the world. No competition. These cars are all over Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Europe. But you won't find them here at all. And why not? Because Mr. Trump put a tariff of 27% when he was president, and Mr. Biden raised it to 100%, which means that if you want a $30,000 electric car, the best, you could get that from China. But when it comes into the United States and you've paid out your 30 grand to get the car, you've got to give 100% of that, another 30 grand, to Uncle Sam for the tariff. So the total cost of the car will be $60,000, and Americans aren't buying it because they can get electric cars, not as good, but they can get other ones for 40 and 50 grand from Ford and GM. Or this is the reality. The rest of the world is able to get a much better deal on their electric car than Americans are allowed to have. That may be good for Ford and General Motors, but it's bad for the rest of us. It denies us what people in every other part of the world are getting. That is what China is now able to do. Look, let me be blunt with you. Either we come to terms with China and figure out how to live together on this planet, or we're heading into a confrontation. And if we have a confrontation, remember two things. Number one, China's closest ally is Russia. And between them, they have more nuclear weapons than the United States has. The second thing to know is that China, India, Russia, South Africa, and Brazil are part of something called the BRICS. And if you add up all the people in the BRICS, because there are other countries that have joined them, it's over 50% of the people on this planet that we all live on. The United States' population is 4.5% of the people. You really want to go to war? Really? Think about it. Wouldn't it be better, way better, to sit down and say, okay, we can live and let live. Let's work out a plan. You know, when the United States was a little colony of Britain back in the 18th century, we fought 2 wars to break away from Britain. The War of Independence in 1774, and then another war in 1812. Took 2 wars to teach the British, don't you think you can hold us back? You better work out a livable deal with us on this planet. And we did. And there were no more wars between Britain and the United States, even though we became the big one and they became the little one, reversing the way it had been. We can do the same with China, and we better.
Yeah, that's something I've definitely been warning people about. And speaking of the future, I wanted to bring this to your attention. I'm not sure if you saw this, but this was recent. Bill Gates says AI will replace doctors, teachers, and more in the next 10 years, making humans unnecessary for most things. So there's been a lot of conversation about AI and the potential of AI. Some of these replacements, I think we're already seeing a little bit of it. Because even if you look on YouTube, if you look at these movie review channels, now I'm noticing the algorithm is pushing me movie reviews that are done by AI, where it's not a person anymore. And I always skip those because it's kind of boring. It's a monotone voice, etc. But we're starting to see AI kind of expand its reach here a little bit. Elon Musk gave a warning in an interview about a year and a half ago, where he said that eventually with AI, most of you are not going to have your jobs. So you're going to have to find something else to do. If this holds true with Bill Gates, and Bill Gates is pushing this, by the way, he supports this 100%. So again, another billionaire trying to replace the workers, where teachers and doctors could be replaced in 10 years. My question is, what happens to those teachers and doctors? What happens if, again, we don't have universal health care and they no longer have health insurance because they're not employed there because our health insurance is attached to our job? Like, what? I'm just thinking about the disaster that this could cause. But what do you think their ultimate goal here? And how do you feel about this idea that AI could replace teachers and doctors within the next 10 years?
Well, first of all, let me remind everyone, when you hear Bill Gates or Elon Musk or any of the others talk about what AI will do, please remember, they are pushing a product that they sell. This is a profit-making promotion, this conversation they're having with you. They are not neutrals here. What you're hearing is an advertisement. That's really all it is. It's as if they were selling you bar soap, the kind that you take into the shower with you. And they were telling you, use this soap because not only will it clean you all up, but it will transform your sex life. Well, you giggle because you know what's going on. They want you to buy their soap, so they're telling you this noise in order to get. That's what this is. This is AIA is coming. AIA is going to be doing all these. They want people to buy and get used to AIA. AIA is a tool. It's like the typewriter. It's like your computer, all these other things. It can help you in your life or it can take your job away. It doesn't have to do one or the other. That's a choice. If we allow these people to push it, they will, because it's profit in their pocket. That's all that this is. Let me give you two examples. I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher all my life. And you can tell from my gray hair, I've been doing it a while, right? Teaching is a very sophisticated and subtle business. What really taught me were a handful of my teachers with whom a personal connection emerged. I'm not exactly sure why they were so important to me rather than the other teacher, but there's something very personal. It's like growing up. You're going to have a feeling about your mother and your father that's a little different from whatever other relationships you form because of all the subtle things that transpired as you were growing up. Well, the same is true if you sit for a semester or for 4 years in a college or in a classroom. These are powerful, number one. Number two, what does AI have? Whatever people put into it. There's nothing coming out that didn't go in. There's no magic here. Otherwise, you become a child and being told fairy tale stories. That's why much of what you said, for example, much of artificial intelligence is kind of flat and like flat soda, It's lost all of its sparkle because it isn't a human being. We're changing every day in lots of subtle ways. Take us years to go back and figure out the changes we made. I'm a different person with my wife each day. Sometimes she's happy about it, sometimes not so much, and vice versa. Human beings are complexities, only a small portion of which is put into an AI machine. And that's only the small part that comes out. I don't want a doctor that comes out of a machine because every person is unique, every body. Your body and my body, we are affected. We grew up in a different way. We had a different diet. We breathe different air. And so there's uniquenesses. I want a doctor who's dealt with these uniquenesses, has a sensitivity for it, so I can share what occurs to me and have a trained brain think about, I don't want what's left in the machine. What a horrible image. And here's a way to understand AI that's humane. We don't have to, let me give you an example. Suppose we have 100 people working in a business, and now AI is brought in by the employer. And the AI, he says, wow, I can get the same work done with half of you, 50, instead of all 100 of you, if I bring in AI. I'm bringing in AI, and you 50, you're fired. Why would he do it? Because he gets the same output. He sells it at the same price. He brings in the same revenue. But instead of paying the salary of 50 workers, he keeps it for himself. His profits, therefore, zoom. He's very happy. But is that the only way to use AI? No. Here's an alternative. Suppose this wasn't a capitalist enterprise with an employer. Suppose this was a worker co-op, a group of working people who are all equal. Each one of them has one vote to decide what is done in the business. A democratic enterprise. Here's what they would do. The AI makes us all twice as productive as we used to be. Nobody's going to be fired. Everybody's going to have a half-day job, because we only need you 4 hours a day, because the AI can make you all twice as productive. Everybody keeps their job. Everybody keeps their income. And the benefit of AI is to give everybody 4 hours a day of leisure. Could that be done? Yes. Has that been done? Yes. Is that an alternative? Yes. Is that something Mr. Musk or Mr. Gates will talk to you about? Never. Never. That's the important thing to keep in mind. Don't be fooled by people telling you if you only use their soap, your sex life will get so much better.
That's a really good point. And one more question I have for you. You mentioned the recession. So I know one of the things that you said before on democracy at work is that we typically can have a recession every 4 to 7 years or something like that. So
Right.
if that's the case, and if there's a recession coming this year, then that means that students that are graduating from college right now, or let's say even the next year, because some of them may already have job offers lined up, they may find themselves stuck in a place where the field that they studied in college may not be gainfully employable. And this is a question I've been wanting to ask you for quite a while. There are many of us that are millennials and Gen Z that went through this, where we went to college and we studied one field. By the time we graduated, because of economic crises or whatever, that particular field was not trying to hire people. In fact, they were laying off people. Then you end up with college graduates that just get a job to get one so that they can pay the bills. But now they have all this student loan debt that they didn't even get to use this field that they studied for.
Right.
What advice would you give people this year economically? And in particular, some of these undergraduate, the college students who are just trying to figure everything out and navigate this space in a country where it does seem like more and more of these fields are starting to be replaced by automation.
Here's what I would say, and my apologies in advance if this frustrates folks. It's too far gone in our society to solve these problems individually. I wish that weren't true. I wish I could give you a piece of good advice, or 2 pieces even better, about how to navigate. Your question is 100% appropriate and right on target. But I can't, and I'm not going to BS you. The problem is not you, and the problem is not your particular field that you chose to. We have a society that is unable to do something that all societies ought to do, namely, provide to every young man or woman coming out of the education system we have with an employment that benefits society by utilizing what they are good at, what they studied, what they learned, what skills they accumulated along the way. It is the height of self-destructive stupidity not to do that, to say to you, hey, go out there and look for a job and, if you don't find one, look someplace else. We never do the military that way. We don't say, here's a gun, go find a place to shoot it from. We don't do that, because that would be real stupid. We set up a system. We draw people in. Sometimes we draft them. We require them to, and then we train them, and we house them, and we put them in a place where whatever skill we have found in them can be useful to the military effort. Well, if that's worth it for the military, and we hope never to fight war, why aren't we doing that for the civilian who needs it? This system has a good place for everyone ready, willing, and able to work. For those of you that have spent some time studying so you can be more productive than you could have been without the study, well, it's our job, the society's job, to get you in a place where you can contribute what you know how to do and earn a decent income and live a life. That's what a good society does. So I have to give you this bad news, because you've already figured it out. We don't live in a good society. We live in a society that is in deep trouble but wants to pretend that it isn't. But that it's showing. And one of the ways it's showing is what you just said, the fact that we're training people and then not giving them a chance to do the work that they trained for. That's a betrayal of that person, but it's self-destructive for society. I live in New York City. I got into a cab the other day. I started talking with the person, and I realized, I said, you know a lot about economics. He said, yeah, I have a master's degree in economics. So I said, what are you doing driving a cab? He said, it's the only job I could get. Okay, nothing against cab drivers. That's an important job. But this is a person who would have liked to do something else, who was trained to do something else, that this country needs to be doing something else, but there's no way to get it done. That's a social problem. You're not going to solve that all by yourself. That's asking more of you than any society has the right to do. You did your job. You went to school, you went to work, you read the books, you took the tests, you graduated, you have something to show for it. Now it's the turn of the society to find a place that meets your personal needs and allows you to contribute to society. And if it isn't helping you, that's the fault of the society, not the fault of you. Don't go slinking off to the bar, or don't go slinking off feeling bad. I mean, that's going to happen to you if you can't get a job. But it should make you angry. It should make you politically and socially active. We need people to change the society so this doesn't keep happening to millions of good young people. That is something that is costing this society and something we all ought to know about and deal with.
Professor Wolff, do you think that canceling student loan debt, because this is some of the pushback I've received from some people that study econ, they say that canceling student loan debt would cause more inflation. I personally think it would benefit the economy, because then people would be able to put that money towards a down payment for a home, and then that would help the housing market. But from an economic standpoint, if we were to cancel all student loan debt, would that cause a problem with inflation?
No, and if it did, there are things we can do to offset any inflationary fact. Look, this sudden worry about inflation strikes me as bizarre. We're following Mr. Trump in imposing tariffs. What do you think a tariff is? It's a tax on something coming in the country. It means if you bring something in the country that cost you $50 before, now if a tariff is applied by Mr. Trump, it'll cost you the $50 it always cost you, plus the tariff, which goes to Uncle Sam. So that's an inflation. Prices are going up. He doesn't want us to worry about that. Well, then why would you want us to worry about relieving student loan? It's a hell of a lot more important to the students to not have to live under that hatchet over their head of that debt than it is to deal with it's so unfair and God, it's hard for me. No, the answer is A, it doesn't necessarily cause an inflation. B, if it did begin to do that, we have a whole host of ways of dealing with inflation in this country. That should never hold you back from something that 40 million young people entering the labor force are worried about. Doing something to help them is the best way to help the economy. They will now be able maybe to do some more going to school because they don't live under this debt. They can go and get more training, get more productive, more creative in the work that they do. Yeah, and start a family and get married, do all kinds of things that they have been postponing for that and other reasons. Look, again, I'll give my example of my European family, my French family. Their young people don't know what I'm talking about when I tell them about how much debt my students carry. They don't carry any debt, and they don't come from rich families or anything like that. They don't have to borrow because they're not paying wild amounts per credit. They don't do that. And when you ask them, they give you the simple answer, which would apply to America. Educating people makes our society better. The more educated people are, the more creative in whatever job they have, they can be. It's good for all of us. The more our young people go and get educated. If you're older, you'll hear older people say, I wish I had had that opportunity when I was a young person. We are shooting ourselves in the foot, as people used to say, by making it hard for young people to get educated, by putting this absurd financial burden on them. Look, we provide kindergarten, first grade, all the way through 12th grade of the high school for free. We don't make people pay. We don't make people borrow money to send their children to school. Well, if that makes sense, which it does, then it also makes sense to give them the money to go to another 2 years or another 4 years and get that much better educated. It's good for everybody, good for those individuals too. Do it. And the only reason we don't do it is because rich people don't want to pay the taxes that would make all this possible. Elon Musk, with $400 billion of wealth, is fighting against being taxed. He's given money to Mr. Trump, lots of it. Money to Republican candidates all across the country, lots of it. Why? To prevent him from being taxed. So the government doesn't have the money to pay for higher education. You know, the first job I took as a professor was at the City University of New York. I had other offers. I took that job. Why? Because in those days, the City University of New York was free. New York City young people could go to college without having to pay anything, which is like they do it in Europe. It was that way for 125 years, giving New Yorkers a leg up that didn't exist in most other American cities. Instead of expanding that to the country, they now make CUNY students pay. We're going backwards in this society, not forwards.
Professor Richard Wolff, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Sabrina, and my congratulations, because having these kinds of conversations that open this up, that's an enormous service you're doing at a time when this country really needs it.
Thank you. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.